Hello, it's Kim again. Today what I want to do is I want to share how we can get rid of or reduce dramatically and finally eventually get rid of our pessimistic thinking, or what I like to call our worst case scenario outcome thinking. So I don't know this, but this has been a pattern in my life which I'm finally now finally for good not, which is expecting the worst potential outcome rather than expecting the best outcome. And really, this is just a mind habit, right? It's a habit of thinking. And for me personally, it was a habit of very, very early on. But the problem is our thoughts and our feelings lead to results. And our thoughts and our feelings create our reality. So if we have negative thinking and negative feelings, then they're going to lead to unhappiness and illness. Whereas if we have happy thoughts, positive, optimistic thoughts and feelings, then that is going to end up with joy, happiness, success, wealth, abundance, all the things that we really want. And really, if we think about it, when we're having a worst case scenario thought, in other words, this is my situation currently and it's likely to get worse in the future. If we stop and think about it, it's only in our head. It feels so real. It just feels like, well, this is my reality now, and therefore this is going to be my reality in the future. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can create something different, but in order to create something different, we have to do something different. And there's that very well-known saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you want to get some different results, then, and I do personally, then we have to change it up and be willing to do something different. So for example, you might have a pessimistic thought around money. That's pretty common for people. I don't have any money now, and therefore I'm either not going to have any in the future, or it's actually going to be worse in the future. Now, when we have those thoughts, they bring with them feelings, and they bring with them what we can call below the line feelings of hopelessness, despair, frustration, sadness, lots of negative stuff, which is just really not enjoyable to experience. And what mostly happens is either we're not aware of the thoughts, they're just so habitual we don't even know that they're going on, or if we are semi-aware of them, we don't do anything about it and we just buy into it. And one of the things with thoughts and feelings is a really very important point lesson that I learned many years ago from my first Qigong teacher, was that there's a difference between thoughts and feelings. Thoughts are rational and feelings are irrational. And feelings cannot be thought away. So thoughts are rational, feelings are irrational, and emotions or feelings cannot be thought away. And that is what most people are trying to do. So I'd like to invite you in a moment to a little exercise. But another important point, I was just reading, as you know, I've been mentioning a book, The Course in Miracles, recently. And I was just reading one of the lessons yesterday, and they were talking about the difference between a closed mind and an open mind. And a closed mind sees or thinks or believes that the future is going to equal the present. But the future does not have to equal the present. But when we have this thought, the future is either going to be equal to the present or even worse than the present, that doesn't allow something else to come in that's better. And we just assume that the future is going to be equal or worse to the present. And the way to open our mind up to new possibilities is to ask a question. And there's a very common one, which I can't remember the technique it comes from, but a question is, what else is possible? Instead of continually thinking, oh, this terrible thing is going to happen, we ask ourselves, what else is possible? And another one that Catherine Newton just shared this weekend is, I wonder how. I wonder how this could be different. So we have to start opening our mind more and asking questions rather than assuming a potential negative outcome. And there's a lovely saying, worrying is mentally rehearsing what we don't want to happen. And I've been a massive worrywart, and I work with a lot of people who are big worrywarts, and worry develops into anxiety, and it creates a lot of strain and stress in our system, and it literally ties our chi up in knots, which is why we say things like, I was sick with worry, and we literally get sick in our digestive system. So we've just got to stop the worry, the anxiety, the negative thinking, the worst case scenario outcome thinking. So here's a little formula that you can practice and try out for changing this pessimistic thinking. So the first step is awareness. We're not aware of what we're not aware of. That was another lesson I also learned very early on with my first Qigong teacher. We're not aware of what we're not aware of, and all healing comes from becoming aware of what we were previously unaware of. So first of all, we have to become aware of the thoughts. And if they're a real habit, then it's going to take a little while to become aware of that habit, and then to literally stop ourselves in our tracks once we're in that habit again. So awareness is the first step, and you might want to write down these steps. The second step is we need to acknowledge how we're feeling. Because when we have this type of thinking, which is very negative, pessimistic, worry, anxiety, we're going to feel a certain way, and it's probably not going to be a good feeling. And so we need to feel into that. And what I recommend people do in order to do this, especially if they're not used to noticing where their feelings are in their body, is to close one's eyes. So you might want to pick something actually right now, maybe something that you have, you're worrying about, or you have potential negative outcome thinking going on. Just think of something right now. Could be anything, it could be big, it could be small. Just think of something. And then now that means you've become aware of it, right? You're aware that you're worrying about X, Y, Z. Then close your eyes. Close your eyes. And just acknowledge the truth that you're worrying about this, that you have this negative thought. And just notice where in your body you feel the effects of that thinking and those feelings. Because thoughts and emotions are very intimately related, and sometimes things start with an emotion or a feeling, and then the thought comes after. Sometimes things start with a thought and then the feeling comes after. But just notice where in your body do you feel the effects of this negative thinking. And it may be in your head, it may be somewhere in your body, often in the trunk of our body. And it may be in many places, it may be in more than one place, but I assure you it's going to be somewhere in your body. It is not just in the head. Because every thought we have literally changes our chemical structure, our cells at a fundamental level. Literally, hormonal changes happen in our body according to whether we're thinking positively or negatively. So just notice what you're feeling, what it feels like. And then next step is to accept, without any judgment at all, how you're feeling. Just totally embrace this feeling. It's like you're holding your arms out and you're just holding it all. You're holding all this negative thinking, all this worry and fear. There's going to be fear here with these negative thoughts often. Just totally accept and embrace and welcome in these. And just notice what happens when you do that. Notice what shifts inside your body when you accept without judgment, when you embrace it all. And probably what you're going to notice is there's going to be a lessening of whatever that fear was or that stress was. It's going to lighten up. It's going to start to dissolve. Because the interesting thing about emotions is, as I said, they can't be thought away, but when we put the light of consciousness on them and we totally accept them unconditionally, which means without any conditions, they start to dissolve. And this is internal alchemy. And this is what I learned a long time ago when it was a turning point for me, when I was getting well from chronic illness. And I started to learn how to process emotional energy inside the body and literally, magically dissipate it just by acknowledging it and accepting it and loving it. This is what we need to do. And now what I'd like you to do, now this energy has probably reduced, I'd also like you to thank it. I'd like you to thank it for being there, because it's been serving a purpose. It's been asking you to put your attention on it so that it has a gift and a lesson for you. So even though that may seem a bit strange to thank your fears and your worries and your pessimism, I just want you to thank it. Thank it for being there. And see, is there a gift there? Is there a message in that negativity? Because there will be. And don't worry if you're not getting the message now. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't get it in this process. But it's just a good thing to do, is to thank it, really be grateful. And just notice also how, as when you're here now, right here now, you're not in the future, you're not in the past. This is what Eckhart Tolle talks about so much. When you're here right now in this moment, actually there is nothing to fear. You're okay right now. And over the years, when I first set up my business, I would go into so much fear so often with this positive worst case scenario, negative worry thinking. And I would often think to myself, I don't know where my next client's going to come from, and I'm going to have to go and get a job. And then I would stop myself and I would say, but am I okay right now? And always I was. I was always okay right now. So even with the situation that you have right now that you're thinking of, the question is, are you okay right now in this moment? And I'm guessing you probably are. Now this is the really interesting thing, is that by doing this exercise, we're not necessarily immediately changing the situation. But what we are doing is we're changing how we feel about the situation. And this is really, really important. Because if we continue to go down this negative thinking cycle, it literally leads us, our body turns on the stress response. We literally, in our reptilian brain, we go into the fight-flight response. And we go into sometimes the freeze response. Our brain freezes up and we can't think what to do. We don't know what action to take. There are no solutions coming into our mind. But when we dissolve the fear and the worry, and we reduce this anxiety and this stress inside of us, even though the situation hasn't changed yet, maybe, we just feel better about it. And then that allows us to be able to do something more positive about it, and then to start changing it around and asking questions like, well, what else is possible? How can I change this? I wonder how I can change this. More open questions. So rather than having this closed mind, which is going down this route to this dead-end tunnel, which is really what this pessimistic thinking is all about, we open our mind up to new possibilities. And I remember I had a client once who was chronically ill and just couldn't see a way out. And I said to her, please go away, and I just want you to ask yourself, what is it that I need to do? Or how is it that I can change this situation? And I told her not to even try and find the answer herself. I said, go and ask, just put it out to the universe, just go away, put it out, and ask, how is it I can change this situation? And I knew, I could see that the answer to her situation was that she needed to get out of the environment she was in. She was in a very unhealthy negative family environment, and that was what was really contributing to her symptoms. And I knew that until she got out of that environment, things were not going to change. But she was finding it impossible to see how she could get out of her environment. But she did. She went away and she just put it out there, and she said, what is it, or how is it that I can change my situation, and how is it that I can get out of my family environment? environment. And literally, I said, I can't believe it. After I put that question out to the universe, I had a call from my aunt who lives in South Africa, and she's invited me to go and live with her. And bam, her health just started to go upwards from there. So just to recap those steps, first of all, we have to become aware of the thinking because it's so habitual, often not aware of it. That's the first step, very important. Then we have to acknowledge the truth feeling and accept it without any judgment. That means accepting the thoughts, accepting the feelings. And we embrace them. And we give ourselves permission to feel it, to just go into the physical sensation in our body. And we thank it, we embrace it, we welcome it. That is unconditional love. That is unconditional acceptance. And that is what we need to give ourselves. Because the problem is we never got that often when we were young, and we've been seeking it ever since. And because we felt rejected, we've been rejecting ourselves, and we've been rejecting our feelings. So we have to turn it around, we have to accept ourselves. And that brings us into the present moment where internally something shifts. And this is actually called alchemy. It's called internal alchemy. And this is what I did for years with Qigong and Chinese medicine, is learning to literally create alchemy inside our body from the inside out. So, yes, I think that's all I have to share today. I'm just checking my notes here. Ultimately, what happens is we start to lift our vibration, we start to think differently, and instead of having the hopelessness and the despair and the worst case scenario, we start to build trust, we start to build hope, we start to build optimism for new potential outcomes, and this is all possible. So I wish you luck with that.